There we go. Just like that. Boom. Here we are. Hi, I'm Dan Schmidt. Daniel, Dan E, or Dan, however you want to pronounce it or say it. Deer and deer hunting. I've been here for almost 30 years, and welcome to the Deer Talk Now podcast, which we have been doing since 2012, if you can believe that. It's just been an amazing ride on this podcast. We appreciate everybody joining us. Today, we are talking about something that I think we all love. I hope we all love bow hunting, whitetails, and archery in specific fashion. Before I introduce our guest, I want to make sure that you are downloading these podcasts, listening to them, and watching them. I haven't done this in a while, and I'm going to do it real here quickly. If you want to listen to the podcast, Podbeam, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Amazon's Audible, Breaker, Stitcher, Player FM, Castbox, Listen Notes, Deezer, Overcast, Podcast Addict. If you want to watch the video versions, go to our Facebook page, Deer and Deer Hunting, or our YouTube page, which has got a great, the way they're organized. It's YouTube /DDH Online. You can watch them all there. So that being said, I'm going to introduce our guest here, an esteemed guest. He is an archery expert. He works for a company that we know very well here at Deer and Deer Hunting. His name is Brandon Reyes, and he works for Tomorrow's Resources Unlimited, which you might know as True Ball. Brandon, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's great to be with you guys. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. We appreciate it, and we're really going to appreciate your insights on archery. I actually threw this out there. I chummed the waters yesterday on my social media pages, and gratuitous plug there, Dan Schmidt Deer, if you guys want to find me individually on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. But I asked, I have a bunch of loyal guys that have been listening to the podcast forever, and I said, hey, give me some questions that we can ask Brandon. So that's what we're going to get to. But before we do that, Brandon, let's hear about your background. I know that you were a competitive archer for many years, and now you work for Tomorrow's Resources. Just let's give the audience a little bit of background on you.
Okay. I started archery basically as a bow hunter. My dad and my grandfather were big into bow hunting and just slightly dabbled into, our archery, fun archery, recreation archery. And so that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. But then over time, as I grew into being a teenager, I kind of put athletics in school aside because I was starting to get more inclined to archery, and the older I got, the heavier I got involved in it. So I kind of took it to a different level than what my relatives and my grandfather and father had introduced me at. So that's kind of how it all started. I've been a professional archer now. Uh, Basically, I've spent my whole entire career with Matthews. This year marks 20 years as a pro for
Wow.
Matthews, and so my pretty much my entire professional career has been with one archery bow company, which is unheard of these days. You don't see that very often. People are bouncing around for different reasons, but with that, before that, I went through the amateur ranks in target archery, and then also semi-pro ranks all the way up into that point. So, kind of different than today's archer, where you have a lot of information at the tips of your fingers as far as the internet's concerned. A lot of the stuff, and the reason why it took me longer coming up through the ranks was because a lot of it was self-taught. Uh, but I am happy to say that through all of that, over 30 years now, I've been shooting at some level. I have never, ever even thought about losing my desire for bow hunting, especially whitetails. Uh, I grew up in the Midwest, so I cut my teeth on whitetail hunting. I moved to Virginia in 2007, and we still, have a good whitetail hunting uh, deer herd here in Virginia. It's a little different than what I'm used to because of all the timber and all the forests and the mountains. Where I'm from Indiana originally, and it was just small wood lots scattered here and there. I do miss that style of hunting, but I do a lot of traveling still these days to different states for different purposes of either deer hunting or whatever animal I can get away to shoot. But yeah, so it's been over 30 years, and I've been involved in archery at some capacity. and then moving here in 2007, it's really kept me or got me even hot and heavier into the archery industry now with the business here. That's a family-owned business that thrilled to be part of and have been part of for 16 years now.
Wow, that's fascinating. A couple things that I didn't know. I didn't know you're from Indiana. I do know that the Summers brothers, it would be Greg and Dan, when they started, they were in Michigan, and they moved to Virginia, or Greg did, anyways. And
Yep.
and one thing that people might not know is, so Greg started. I'm sorry, I'm always going to call it True Ball because that's how I got to know
Yep.
those guys.
Yep.
But he started True Ball. They worked together, but then Dan branched off and he started Quality Archery Designs, right?
Correct. Yeah, most people don't realize that my father-in-law, which is the owner of True Ball and Excel Archery now, is brothers with Dan, which is Quality Archery Designs that makes the Q80 Rest, the Exodus rod heads, and we're literally a stone's throw away from each other. Literally, factories are they were a little bit farther apart, but Dan just built a new facility recently, like in the last 5 years. And they are approximately, probably as the crow flies, maybe a mile from us, mile and a
Wow.
quarter at the most. But
Family,
yeah,
extended family business right there in Virginia.
yeah, yeah. So they're literally just right across the highway from us, and we definitely like do different things. Like we, you know, manufacture sights, releases, stabilizers, scopes. They kind of do rests and broadheads, knocks, and a few other things over there. So we're kind of completely different entities as far as what we bring to the archery industry, but very strong businesses from the same family in the archery industry solidly.
Very strong, and a couple things there. A faith Christ-based family, which I've always admired. I met Ben. Ben is Greg's son. I met Ben
Yep.
back when I first started. So to give you a little bit of insight there, I've shot Matthews bow since 1997.
Yep.
That was my first one. And I brought this as a prop so Ben can, when he's watching this podcast, he can see it. But that was the first hunt I was ever on with Ben. And you can't read
Yep.
it, but I'm going to read it for you. This was from 1999. And Howard Tripp put this together. He was the consummate PR guy. This was awesome. But it was an industry hunt. It says, get psyched. The new millennium starts 3 weeks early. So this would have been the first week of December 1999. And it
Yep.
was a hunt with Bear River Tree Stands, North American Archery Group. So if you remember, it was Bear Archery, Jennings,
Yep.
Satellite, all those brands, Realtree, and True Ball. And I was there when Ben shot. I can't remember now. It was either a really nice 8-pointer or a really nice 10-pointer. We were in Texas. So Ben's going to
Yep.
remember that. I'm sure he's got those antlers somewhere. But
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
that was so much fun. But we were talking about, okay, so when these guys started this company, I believe, correct me if my memory's wrong, but I think Greg kind of dabbled in the late 70s because he was a machinist, kind of an engineer, started playing around with this stuff. He came out with that first. Brad Rux tells a story. I think it would have been about 1995-ish.
Hmm.
He showed up at the show and he came to our booth and he was showing Brad the actual. If you guys remember, it was a ball that you attached, and they had a
Yep.
release that clapped onto it, and
Yep.
and he ran an ad in DDH, and the first guy that called from that ad, Greg actually tried to talk him out of buying the release because he. This shows how much conscientious he was. He could tell the guy didn't have a lot of money. And the guy
Yep.
said, and he goes, "This is like $150 release, because you could probably get by with this, $30 release." And the
Yep.
guy said, "No." He goes, "I want the best." He goes, "Just tell me what's the best one there is." He goes, "Well, I think this one is." And the guy bought it. So I
Yep.
thought that was a cool story on how he kind of got started, and this American success story, which we do see a lot in this industry, is still alive alive and well today.
Yeah, and that's the big thing is we try to stay, keep our consumers well aware of is that we are American made, family owned business in, 2023, about to be 24. But, and that's, we've been approached multiple times about different larger companies purchasing our business, but we've always felt, and Greg's always felt that you know, we have employees that we're responsible for here, which is well over 100 now, and we want to be able to provide them with the best job they can, and he feels like under his leadership that can be done. So uh, with that, we grow every year and create new jobs for people every year. So it's been ongoing since I started, and it continues to grow. And uh, to put that into perspective, there was probably in 2007 when I come here, around 7 to 8% of our business was international sales, and I think today we're probably closer to 20,
Wow.
27, 28% international sales. So that's a big thing for us, because we are primarily we started as a target archery business, and the hunting was kind of the secondary. But we use all of the technology and the design and engineering for the target stuff to manufacture high quality hunting stuff. So, and we still do that to this day. But and that's why you find a lot of our stuff, not only because it's American made, but because of the technology and the quality. It's a little bit higher price than you're going to find from companies that are not solely American made. So we continue to strive to keep it that way and make sure that our consumers know that, whether it's on packaging, advertising, whatever. We proudly display the Made in America deal, and we continue to do that as long as we can. Which we do it, but we have to raise the price sometimes, and that hurts. But people, I think, deep down understand that, hey, we know the quality that this company is has established, and we're willing to pay that to continue to buy American.
I think the consumers are too. When you, especially for my purposes, when you have something like that that's tried and true, and then you buy, whether it's a release or a sight or an arrow rest or whatever it is, you have an affinity with that brand when you have
Yep.
that quality. Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Mossberg. Mossberg has been supplying American hunters with quality firearms for over 100 years. Over the years, they've upheld their commitment to innovation by creating a handful of firearms that have shaped the way we hunt today. For more information, visit mossberg.com. So
Sure.
you talked about the international jump. I'm assuming that's mostly just recreational / competitive.
Yeah, it's
Shoot-
mostly target archery.
shooting.
So internationally, there's it's kind of flip flopped. Where primarily in the U.S., the majority of the people buying our product is bow hunters, with a few target people. Internationally, it's the opposite, where primarily it's mostly target shooters and very few bow hunters.
Because the
And
opportunity
that's
just isn't there, I'm assuming.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Different countries, different regulations on hunting, bow hunting. Some allow gun hunting, but not bow hunting, and vice versa. But it's just the opportunity, yeah, like you mentioned, is not as great as it is in the United States. And even with that, a lot of American bow hunters are the ones that you're seeing primarily going internationally hunting.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Well, let's jump into some questions. I've got a few here. We're going to try to get to as many as we can, but we're going to go
Sure.
we're going to kind of mix these in because I know you have expertise in both sides of it, whether it's
Okay.
just archery mechanics or hunting. But the first one
Okay.
this is kind of a broad brush question, but in your opinion, what's the number one, and I didn't get names on these questions. Sorry, guys. You're going to know who contributed. What is the number one attribute of good archery accuracy?
I think the thing that stands out to me most right here is, I mean, the tuning of the equipment is important. Probably the most important, because I mean, just face it, if you go out into the woods and you're shooting, or you're just going out into your backyard and practicing, if you're shooting equipment that isn't properly tuned, or doesn't properly fit. And fit could be draw length or poundage. I think that those are going to be the biggest factors that's not going to make you be able to be very accurate. So my number one, um, when I'm choosing equipment, my number one attribute or my feature that I'm looking for is what's going to make me the most accurate. And I get into this debate a lot with not a lot, but I make my opinion known a lot. Uh, and this can cover a lot of different probably questions that you're going to have, is the heavy arrow debate. There's a lot of archers out there that think they want to shoot like a 700-800 grain arrow because they want to get that kinetic energy, or they're looking for a certain front of center, or FOCs it's called, in their arrow. And to me, I just think all that is, that all of those things I just mentioned are um, somewhat important, but I think that there's a limit there. And I think once you get over a certain limit, it starts to decrease your ability to be accurate. And you're not going to have much forgiveness in yourself. And if you're not someone like me that shoots every day, uh, then it just kind of makes me wonder why somebody would even go that direction even more. So accuracy is my number one uh, feature when I'm looking at broadhead selection, arrow selection, bow selection, and then all of the tech part that goes into setting that bow up, poundage, draw length, knock point, all that stuff, because I'm looking for the thing that's going to make me the most accurate. Another thing that can be tied into that is broadhead selection. Some people are like, well, should I shoot a fixed blade? Should I shoot a mechanical? And my response to that, when somebody asks me all the time, this question is, what do you feel like makes you the most accurate? What are you going to be able to shoot the best groups with, and be able to, in the heat of the moment, make the shot count, uh, and put the arrow where you want to put it. And to me, that's accuracy, the number one key point for anything, or anytime I'm setting something up. And whatever I can do to make myself the most accurate is what I'm looking for uh, in my setup and everything.
Okay, I could take a number of sidebars here. I'm going to just take one because I know everybody's
Okay.
going to be interested. Which bow are you shooting currently for your hunting setup?
I was fortunate enough to get a lift,
Yep.
so I have a lift 29. However, I will say that it's a 29.5, but my that was just one that they sent me. Ideally, I would shoot the longer bow, the 33-inch bow. So I have one of those coming, and I'll probably shoot that one. But it'll be the lift, 29 and a half currently until I get the new one.
That's the
But
bow that I just started shooting. We just put the video up there. I'm shooting the
yep.
short one too, and up until then, I was shooting the Phase 4. But and I know the answer to this, but for the guy who's listening, why do you prefer the longer one as opposed to the 29.5?
Again, it goes back to accuracy. I think it's going to make me more forgiving. Uh, and especially, like, I don't only deer hunt. So if I'm going moose hunting, or if I'm going elk hunting, I want to be able to shoot a longer distance if possible, or if needed. I feel like the little bit longer bow at the longer distances makes me more accurate.
Perfect.
It has nothing to do with weight. It has nothing to do with string angle or anything like that. It's just strictly what I feel like is going to make me the most accurate.
Awesome. Okay, this next question you kind of answered, but we're going to ask it anyways. How do I know if my draw weight is too much or not enough?
So it's easy on the too much side. So I always, tell people, especially in a bow hunting situation, if you can't like set on your if you can't set on the seat of your tree stand and have your arm extended straight out and draw your bow back comfortably, then your weight's probably too much. And vice versa. Most of the time, when you don't have enough, it could be things that stand out, like you're just drawing the bow too easy and you feel like you're going to pull the string through the stops type thing. Um, but most of the time, if it's not enough, you'll find different, like your tuning maybe not be correct, or you may have too heavy an arrow for the poundage of the bow, and you may see a lot of loft in your arrow. You may see your pins widen out. So those are things that that stand out. The big thing is most people don't not pull enough poundage. I think we see people that lean on the side of pulling too much or trying to pull too much. And the tip that I said, where you're most time we're going to be standing and shooting out of a tree stand or shooting, uh, in a on foot position. But if not, if you can't put your bow arm out straight and then hook your release up and draw the bow straight back comfortably, you don't. I mean, they call it sky drawing, but if guys have to go, like this and come down, a lot of times that's a key sign of, hey, you probably have a little bit too much
Or you
weight.
see people putting it up and then
Yeah.
bringing it down. And
Yep.
that,
Up way high. Yeah. That a lot of people have been accustomed to drawing a bow like that, so that may be part of their form. But a lot of times you're not going to be able to make that kind of movement when you're in a deer stand or when you're in a blind or when you're deer hunting in general. So I always like to tell people, hold the bow straight out and try to pull it straight back. You're going to be noticed least that way. And if you can't do it that way, you probably got too much draw weight.
and that is I agree with Brandon 100%. That is what brings. We always talk about shot placement. Shot placement is the number one thing. And when you can just do that in one swift, Ted Nugent taught me that. Basically, if you can do that one motion, get anchored, you're gonna hit the spot. Okay, this actually question sidebar on that question is specifically for me because I have done it for my entire career. Tell me why I shouldn't do this. But like I get that new bow. I just got that new bow here last week. It was set at 60, which is too much for me. And I'm just like, I'm just going to do this myself. And I back those bolts out a turn each, which were good for me. But that does affect the tuning of that bow, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The big thing is when you back the limb bolts out, it minutely changes the draw length. So if your draw length is borderline anyway, and then you go back and the limb bolts out, that's going to change it even more. So and I can tell you too, just knowing the bows, the last couple 2 or 3 models of bows, maybe even more than that, the amount of turn on the limb stop has like doubled on what it does for poundage. So years ago, we used to be able to take a turn off of the top limb bolt and the bottom limb bolt, and it'd be like maybe 2 pounds. But now those turns are like 5.5, 6 pounds. So, that's something to take into consideration if you're not familiar with working on it all the time, is that a larger adjustment on the limb bolts makes a bigger difference on the poundage these days. And I think a lot of that on the Matthews line is due to the switch weight technology, where you're changing the poundage and the draw length with the module. You don't change the limbs anymore like we used to. So if you wanted to go from a 60 to a 70 10 years ago, you would have to change the limbs. Where now you're just changing, and you would have to put in a press and do all this work previously. Now you're just taking 2 screws out of both cams and changing the module and then putting the screws back in. And you've not only changed the poundage, but you can change the draw length. And I think with that, the bigger adjustment on the limb bolt, that's where you're getting the larger difference from being in a maxed out position to 1 turn off. So yes, it definitely changes the tune, changes the setup completely, and like I said, it will increase your draw length as well when you start backing it off quite a bit. So,
That's great information. So you guys can learn from my mistake there, and don't do what I did. Actually, take it to your pro shop, especially a guy. And we're not saying it has to be Matthews. Whatever you're shooting, if you're shooting any other bow, you're shooting a prime, you're shooting a Hoyt, you're shooting a PSE, whatever you're shooting. Trust. I will always say trust your archery shop guys, because they know what they're doing, especially if they're dealers. We always have supported dealers no matter what it is. These guys know what they're doing, and it's not that expensive to make sure that you're shooting the right equipment, tuned properly.
Absolutely.
This episode is also brought to you by GameHide. At GameHide, the philosophy is pretty simple. Design the best products with the best fabrics and features to help you be more successful in the field. While doing this, they strive to keep their pricing moderate to give you the best value in the hunting clothing industry. I wear the Limitic line of clothing to keep those nasty ticks off of me, and I absolutely love it. Check them out at gamehide.com. Okay, next question. We talked about that one. Next question after that. How do I know if I'm using the wrong spine size arrows? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's again all comes back to tuning. I mean, it depends on if you're paper tuning, what kind of tune you're doing, tuning method that you have or your shop has. A lot of times, wrong spine arrows, you'll find larger groupings as far as say you're shooting at 20 or 30 yards and you just can't get an arrow to tune properly. You'll know right away if you shoot it through paper. Most of the time I would suggest shooting paper about initially a couple feet from the paper, see what the arrow is doing. I tell you one thing that's really nice over the years, like the last several years, few years I guess, is a lot of these companies are sending accessories, depending on what accessories you put on your bow, in a optimal position right out of the package. So when you mount your rest onto your to your bow riser, a lot of times it's in an optimal position to where you're not going to have to move it much right or left to get, hopefully, to get a good tune. So that's something to kind of have in the back of your mind. But getting back to the paper, I prefer that method initially to kind of see what the bow is doing every time I get a new bow, just to be sure that I don't have something way out of whack. That initial shot through the paper is going to give me a good baseline to go from. And a lot of times, if you get a real, wide tear right or left through the paper, that's going to tell you that there's probably something wrong with the spine of your arrow. Most of the time, if you have a left tear and you're a right-handed shooter, most of the time we can probably get that out with arrow rest or knock point. But a lot of times, if you're a right-handed shooter and you have a right tear, in most cases, that's probably a key point to, hey, I might not have the correct arrow spine. So that's something to write down in your notebook as far as notes are concerned when tuning. But other than that, like beyond the paper, if you're like, oh man, I know I have the right arrow. I used this arrow out of my last bow, but it's just not, shooting a good hole through paper. You may, try to do some group tuning or something like that to where you're shooting maybe at a longer distance other than, aside from the 2 feet where you're shooting through the paper. And you just find that your groups are opened up wider than you were like, or you can shoot better than that, but the arrow groupings just aren't proving that, then that's another key sign, hey, maybe I don't have the right spine arrow. Also, the length of the arrow, even if you do have the right spine arrow, but it's not cut to the proper length, that can also be a key sign that the arrow spine might not be correct with your setup.
We're going to mark that because you guys, when you're tuning, you're going to want to come back and listen to this. That is just a great wealth of information. Okay, how many more questions do I get to ask here, Ian? A couple?
Just a few, yeah.
Couple? All right, I'm going to try to look through these here quick, Brandon. This one I like because everybody rips on me for this. Let's talk about release styles. I always use the caliper releases. How do I know if I am, quote, punching the release, and what can be done to fix it? And don't tell me to use a thumb release because I've tried and I can't get the hang of that.
I do personally use a thumb release, but you can punch the tar out of those too. So,
okay.
I tell you, there's primarily 3 styles or three types of releases that people are going to choose over others. There's probably a fourth one that you can add in there nowadays, but you have either an index finger release, which is probably 90% of our bow hunters across America. You have the thumb activated style release, which is basically you're just squeezing the thumb barrel to activate the release, or a back tension or a hinge is what some people call it, which is a triggerless release. And the bail that holds the D loop is actually just sliding off of basically like if you can think of it like a cliff. The bail runs all the way to the edge of the cliff, and as you rotate the release a little farther, then the bail releases, letting the bow go. So that's a hinge. So those are primarily the three types of release aids, the methods that you're going to shoot those release aids as well. The fourth one that I was mentioning has become a little more popular in the last few years, and that's a pull-through style release, which is set to the holding weight of your bow. So once you get to full draw, you either activate or deactivate a cocking lever, and then the holding weight of your bow. For instance, say the holding weight of my bow is 15 pounds. Then I set this release a couple pounds greater than my holding weight. So then when I get to full draw and activate the release, then I have about 2 pounds of pull before it fires. So that's another method where people can select if they have issues of anticipation. Anticipation is the same thing as punching, target panic, whatever you want to call it. There's some really good archers, really good hunters that do well with punching because they've sighted their bow into punching. Now, if you squeeze the trigger off like a normal person, like you would squeeze a gun trigger, and you sight your bow into that, then you go to punching, you're going to notice that your point of impact or your sight pins are not going to be on. So that's something to consider. Remember, oh man, I was in the woods. I know my bow sighted in, and I shot this deer and I shot completely over his back. And I ranged it. It was perfect yardage, and my pins are perfect. I didn't bump them. Well, you probably didn't have the same type of shot that you had in the backyard, and that hence is the reason you shot over top. So that's something that is important to take into consideration when you're thinking about shot execution and all that stuff. So the thumb activated is more like what I use. I use it all summer, so I don't feel there's any need to change for me just because I'm going hunting. So I use the same thing, for hunting as I do for target. So I'm used to it. I use the same one, and I feel like that it gives me, again, going back to the accuracy thing, I think I can be more accurate over time or over several shots compared to an index style or a back tension style. So that's the reason why I shoot the thumb activated. But with that being said, it's important to always, unlike a wrist strap that you have tied to your body, a handle release, whether it be a back tension or a thumb activated or the pull through style, I always would suggest having a backup because I've dropped them to the bottom of the tree before.
Always have a backup. I had one break on me in the stand. This is many years ago, and
Yep.
I just sat there and I watched deer after deer go by me, and I was basically out of luck. There was nothing I
Yep.
could do. Yeah, that's one of the best tips there. Well, we have a whole bunch more questions we're not going to get to, so that means we just have to have Brandon back
Yep.
for another podcast in the future. Brandon, on closing thoughts, is there anything that you can tell us about what's happening for next year, or is that still secret until the archery trade show?
We have a lot of cool stuff coming out. We've been soft releasing stuff for a week or two now. We got basically some big target stuff coming, and we're going to release that stuff. I think we're looking at December 20th and 22nd are going to be our big releases just prior to the ATA show. Of course, all the advertising and stuff that's being set up now and has been set up already we'll have the new stuff featured. But yeah, we got some cool stuff coming. Nothing I can really. I don't think there's anything I can really talk about now, but we always have lived by the motto that we have to, have new product for people to look at to keep ourselves relevant every year. So we strive to do that, and in some cases we have mid-year releases as well. As far as new products concerned, not specifically releases, but we generally try to have something new in the summer, as well as the big releases like currently that we're doing right now in the winter.
So where can all the Deer Talk Now listeners go to check out the new everything from True, Tomorrow's Resources, and also Excel?
So we have, of course, websites for both trueballRarchery.com and excelarchery.com. We have a
Excel
big
is with an
following
A, by the way. We're going to put that on the screen.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yep, AXCEL. And then we have a big following on all of our social media platforms, and we have also a YouTube channel too, where a lot of the videos that I do pertaining to new products or existing products on ways of setting them up and stuff like that can be found. And that's also you can search True Ball Archery to find our YouTube page as well.
Actually, it's a great YouTube channel. I was just looking at it this morning. Guys, check it out. Well, Brandon, thank you very much for joining us today.
Enjoyed it. Can't wait to do it again. Thank you.
Awesome. He's Brandon Reyes. I am Dan Schmidt. Thank you once again for joining us for Deer Talk Now's podcast. And just remember, you can catch these every Thursday wherever podcasts are dropped, and also on our website, deeranddeerhunting.com, and YouTube at /DDH online. For Brandon Reyes, I am Dan Schmidt. We will catch you again next week for another episode of Deer Talk Now. Deer Talk Now is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. Whether I'm in a tree stand, ground blind, or spot and stalk hunting, I know the Nitro 505 is up to any challenge. Check one out at a dealer near you or log on to 10pointcrossbows.com for more information.